It is November 1970. Woodstock by Matthew Southern Comfort is riding high in the charts. The Goodies make their television debut, and the 10-shilling note ceases to be legal tender. Meanwhile, pupils from schools across South Wales flew by Dan Air from Gatwick to Pula Airport in what was then Yugoslavia, and boarded the SS Uganda in Rijeka harbour. I was one of them, armed with an Adriatic camera and a Kodachrome slide film 20 exposure cartridge. The itinerary was to cruise along the Adriatic and Eastern Mediterranean, with stop-offs at Corinth, Athens, Rhodes and Cyprus. The Uganda was built as a passenger liner in 1952 and converted to an educational cruise ship in 1968. The cabins were turned into dormitories, increasing its passenger capacity from just 300 to over 1,200. We all thought she was enormous, but of course she'd be dwarfed by the superliners of today. At Rijeka, there was an option for a trip to the Postjonia Caverns, which, with the full benefit of hindsight, I should have taken. However, as this was an extra cost, we 5 pupils from Bridgend Boys Grammar School elected to wander around the streets of Rijeka instead. Rijeka turned out to be a grim East European port town, filled with soldiers who were very keen to swap cigarettes for British currency. The Uganda travelled along the Dalmatian coast, passing close to Dubrovnik, but sadly not stopping. Our first port of call was Corinth. As the ship was too wide to navigate the Corinth Canal, we all disembarked onto coaches while the Uganda took the long way around the Peloponnese Peninsula. We visited the ruins of Corinth and the amphitheatre at Epidaurus, where the guide demonstrated its exceptional acoustics by dropping a coin. The sound could be heard in every seat in the theatre. From there to Mycenae, city of Perseus and Agamemnon, with its impressive Lion Gate. Finally to Athens, where the main focus was the Acropolis. We reboarded the ship at Piraeus and travelled through the Greek islands to Rhodes. The ship's tiny swimming pool was in constant use. As the Uganda wasn't fitted with stabilizers, it pitched from side to side, and the pool water went from sloshing around your ankles one moment to being way over your head the next. At Rhodes, the highlights were the old town and harbour, and a trip to the ancient Acropolis at Lindos, on the southeast coast. Originally, the plan was to visit Beirut in the Lebanon, but civil unrest had already broken out there, so instead we anchored off the resort of Famagusta in Cyprus. We were able to explore the beaches and shops of Varosha, the very upmarket resort district. From Famagusta, we cruised back to Venice for the flight home. Back then, Cyprus was politically one island, with a population descended from either Greek or Turkish lineage. Unrest between the two communities was deep-seated and came to a head in July 1974, when the Greek military government in Athens carried out a coup d'etat that ousted the charismatic president, Greek Cypriot Archbishop Makarios, and proceeded to annex the island to Greece. In response, 5 days later, Turkey invaded Cyprus and took control of the northeastern part of the island. Fighting was particularly intense in Famagusta, and all of the inhabitants fled to safer havens. Eventually, a dividing line was established across Cyprus, with Greek Cypriots confined to the southwest and Turkish Cypriots to the northeast. Famagusta's Varosha district, however, was completely fenced off by the Turkish army and has remained a ghost town ever since. For 50 years, the buildings have been left derelict, locked away behind a fence. Recently, though, restricted access has been granted, and it is now possible to walk through the deserted streets. I was intrigued to see what had become of the town I visited as a 14-year-old schoolboy, so made a nostalgic trip to see Varosha some 54 years after my first visit.
Politicians hide themselves away. They only started the war. Why shouldn't they go out to fight? They leave that role to the poor. Time will tell on their power and minds, making war just for fun, treating people just like pawns in chess. Wait till their judgment day comes. Yeah. Now when darkness world stops turning, ashes where the body's burning. No more war pigs have the power. Hand of God has struck the hour. Day of judgment, God is calling. On the knees, the war pigs crawling, begging mercy for their sins. Satan laughing spreads his wings.
And what of the SS Uganda? Well, she continued her role as an educational cruise ship plying the Mediterranean and Baltic Seas. In April 1982, the Falklands War broke out, and the Uganda was requisitioned by the Royal Navy. The 1,200 passengers were disembarked at Naples and flown home, and the Uganda was refitted as a hospital ship in Gibraltar. 3 days later, she sailed to the South Atlantic to join the British task force with the call sign Mother Hen. She survived the war and was deregistered as a hospital ship in July 1982. While she was in the task force, she sailed over 26,000 miles, consumed almost 5,000 tons of fuel, received over 1,000 helicopter landings, and more than 3,000 personnel were transferred to or from her. She spent her last 2 years of active life as a store ship in the South Atlantic. Finally, she was brought back to Britain and laid up on the River Fowl in Cornwall. Eventually, she was bought by a Taiwanese breaker, renamed the Triton, and taken to Taiwan, where again she was laid up for several years before foundering in a typhoon. The era of educational cruises founded with her.